A year after my divorce, my ex-wife showed up with a request that completely took me by surprise. A year had passed since my divorce from Sarah, and life had settled into a new routine. The pain of separation had dulled, and I had started to rebuild. Work was keeping me busy, and I'd even started dating again, something I thought I'd never do. I was content, finally at peace with my decision to end the marriage. Or so I thought. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. It was just after 7 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood up, confused, as I walked to the door. When I opened it, there she was, Sarah, my ex-wife, standing there in the dim light, looking nervous. Her face was unchanged, but her eyes, those eyes that used to be full of love and warmth, were now filled with something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Jack," she said softly, her voice a mix of hesitation and uncertainty. "Sarah?" I said, shocked. It had been a year. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce, other than the occasional exchange about our shared possessions or bank accounts. Seeing her standing there, looking so vulnerable, stirred up memories I wasn't ready to face. I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. "Come on in," I said, my voice stiff. The air between us had always been thick with unspoken words, and now it felt heavier than ever. She walked in slowly, her gaze scanning the room like she was unfamiliar with it. We'd spent years building this home together. The walls, the furniture, they all held memories of our shared life. But now everything felt like it was in the past, distant and cold. Even the simple act of seeing her here, in our space, brought back waves of nostalgia, both good and bad. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," she started, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "I didn't know who else to turn to." I waited for her to continue, feeling the knot tighten in my chest. My mind raced, wondering what could possibly bring her to my door after all this time. Was she trying to rekindle something? Or was this just about closure? "Jack, I know we haven't talked much and I know I've made mistakes, but I need a favor," she said, her voice low. "A big one." I looked at her, confused. "A favor? After everything? Why now?" She took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as if gathering the strength to say what she was about to. "I don't expect you to understand, but I need your help with something important. I'm pregnant, Jack, and I don't know what to do." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I stood there for a moment, unable to process what she had just said. Pregnant? After everything? It was almost too much to take in. I felt my heart start to race, my mind scrambling to make sense of her confession. "What?" I finally managed to say, my voice shaking. "How? Why? Are you telling me this?" Sarah looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and sadness. "It's Ben's," she whispered. "We were seeing each other before the divorce, and I never told you because I didn't want to hurt you. But now I don't know what to do. I'm scared, Jack." My world tilted. Ben, my best friend, the man who had been there for me through everything, the one I trusted with my life. And now he had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And Sarah, my ex-wife, had kept this secret for a year, only to show up now with this bombshell. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The anger was bubbling inside me, but it felt like my heart was being torn in two at the same time. I didn't know whether to feel furious or heartbroken. "I didn't want to hurt you more than I already had," she said quietly, her eyes now brimming with tears. "But now I need help. I can't do this alone, Jack. I know it's a lot to ask, but I really need you." I stood there, stunned, my mind spinning. What was I supposed to do with this information? I didn't want to help her, not after everything. But there was a part of me that couldn't ignore her. She was still the woman I had loved, and the idea of her being alone, dealing with all this, tugged at my heart. But my loyalty to Ben, my best friend, my brother in everything, made this situation even more impossible. "I don't know if I can help you, Sarah," I said, shaking my head. You've put me in a position I never imagined. I don't know what you want from me." She stood up, her hands shaking, and took a step closer. "I don't want to make this harder than it is, Jack, but I need your help. I need your support." I looked at her, my heart torn, my mind screaming in confusion. How could I possibly offer help after all of this? Was it even possible to step back into a relationship with her after the years of hurt? But here she was, vulnerable, needing help. The woman who was once my partner, now standing before me, lost and desperate. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice hoarse, "but right now I need to process this." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. And with that, she turned and left, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, feeling like the world had just shifted beneath my feet. The truth had been laid bare, and now I had to face it. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's visit, about the request she had made. My mind was overwhelmed by 1,000 questions, each one more troubling than the last. What was I supposed to do? How could I help her after everything that had happened? And more importantly, what did this mean for me, for my future? I had spent years building a life without her, trying to heal from the betrayal. I'd filled my days with work, tried to reconnect with myself, and even started dating again. I thought I was in control, that I had finally moved on. The idea of reopening old wounds, of helping her with something so intimate, felt impossible. How could I help the woman who had broken my heart and shattered my trust? But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the part of me that still cared for her. Despite everything that had happened, she had been a significant part of my life. I had loved her, I had shared my hopes and dreams with her, and she had been the one I'd turn to for comfort. That history, those memories, they didn't vanish overnight. The urge to protect her, to help her, was still there, buried deep beneath the anger and hurt. I found myself questioning everything: my past, my choices, and the man I had become since the divorce. The person I was now seemed so different from the man I had been, the man who trusted easily, who gave so much of himself to others. That man was gone. Now I was more cautious, more guarded, and more afraid of being hurt again. But despite all of that, here I was, standing at a crossroads. Could I really walk away from someone who had once meant everything to me? Could I really turn my back on her in her time of need? The days passed, and I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could avoid thinking about it. Each time I closed my eyes, Sarah's tearful face haunted me. The guilt and confusion swirled inside me, and I couldn't escape it. On the third day after Sarah's visit, I received another message from her. This time, it wasn't a knock at my door. It wasn't a pleading phone call. It was a simple text, one that made my stomach churn with its urgency. "I need an answer, Jack," the text read. "I'm scared and I can't do this without you. Please, help me." I stared at the screen for a long time. The words blurred before my eyes as I tried to digest them. I wanted to help her, I really did. But the wounds from our past, the betrayal, it was all still so fresh. How could I step back into that world? How could I possibly put myself at risk of being hurt again? I typed, then deleted my response several times. I was torn, not just by the situation at hand, but by the weight of the past. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I sent a simple reply: "I'll help, but we need boundaries, and I need time to think about what this means for us." I hit send, my hand shaking slightly as I put the phone down. There was a sense of finality to the message, but also a sense of uncertainty. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test me in ways I wasn't ready for. I had no idea how this was going to play out, but I knew one thing: I couldn't escape this. No matter how hard I tried, this situation was going to force me to confront the past, to face the woman who had hurt me so deeply, and to decide if I could ever truly forgive her. And in the process, I would have to figure out who I was now and what kind of man I wanted to become. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more watching videos.